The second half of today's show, and I'm calling this the beginning of the second half of today's show, really is about the mind. Really is about talking to what moves us and what gets us centered and what gets us a little further down the road with a little bit more peace of mind. With that in mind, Dr. Ben has joined us again as he's oft wont to do. Good morning to you, sir. It's great to have you back as always.
Good morning. Glad to be back.
We talk a lot about the power of the mind, and people talk about manifestation. I actually have a couple of, what I call some problems with manifestation to some degree. I have problems with when I hear the terms mindfulness. Not that I don't believe in them, and I think that having gone through your notes and knowing what you stand for, this is heavy lifting. We're talking about some real work that people have to do. This isn't just a matter of, think it and be it, think it and do it. There's a lot of work that goes in here, and there's a real clinical approach to, the power of the mind, correct?
Yes, I'd say I agree with you in that that's why we call it mindfulness practice, or meditation practice. Like, you've always got to keep practicing because the fallback is always you fall back into being kind of distracted and oblivious the way we usually are because we got so many things coming at us all the time. And it is hard to stay focused and to stay, in the actual moment. We like to also use this term mindful awareness because it's a little less intimidating. Like you say mindfulness, you think meditation, you think about a Buddhist monk sitting in the mountains and completely, elevated. And it's really more like a moment to moment thing. And it's not like something you achieve and then, okay, now I have mindful awareness for the rest of the day. I mean, it comes and goes every second, every minute. And so that's where the practice comes in because really what you learn how to do is how to bring yourself back when you get slipped away. Right. So that's where the magic is, I think.
We actually, many years ago, had Dr. Nate Zinsner on the show, and he, of course, teaches confidence over at West Point. And in many ways, in going through your notes, I was reminded of his book about confidence. And I was reminded of my father's own experience, too, who has lost 60 pounds over the last year and a half on his own journey to health. He had a bit of a backslide before he kind of put things back together again. And we use the term diet too much in regards to food, when in fact it should be a lifestyle change. And so much of what this power of the mind that you kind of want to talk about today really is about understanding that this is and you said it already, but it's an ongoing sort of experience. It is something that, you have to be mindful about being mindful in the sense that there's no cruise control, at least for a long time, until it becomes kind of motor skill memory, that kind of reflexiveness to do it as part of your daily routine. Can you talk about, and this is so important to kind of set all this up, this is important because there is a connection between our mindset and our physical health. And can you kind of show people exact examples of that where putting ourselves in a proper mindset can lead to better health outcomes and the opposite as well?
Sure, absolutely. I mean, I think, what you just put forward about the weight or, let's say somebody has diabetes or another kind of a diet-connected illness, if you are able to actually make choices in terms of what you eat during the day, as opposed to what we generally do, which is just sort of eat what we're used to eating, eat the amount that's in front of us, then your blood sugar is going to improve, right? Absolutely. Another example is if you are able to take a walk after you eat a meal, just even a brief walk. We know that exercise stimulates insulin release, and that's going to bring your blood sugar down. And then we know if you're a person with diabetes or blood sugar problems, that controlling your blood sugar in the long run is going to lead to all kinds of really important outcomes for you, your heart health, your vision, your circulation, all that is going to be improved over time, and you're going to be able to do what's important in your life because you took that moment-to-moment sort of pause and said, okay, maybe I've had enough to eat, even though there's something left on my plate, or even though there's a dish on the table and I can take seconds. So that's where that kind of, and that's where this whole idea of like, when you say mindfulness meditation, you think of like somebody sitting for 20 minutes or a half hour once or twice a day. That's super important. but it's really that moment to moment ability to pay attention. That's really in the end what is most important for making a difference for your health and for your quality of life too, I think. And what I'd say is, I'm sorry I'm going on about this, but this is something I really am passionate about. I meditate every day, and sometimes I get a half hour and sometimes I get 20 minutes in. Once in a while I forget, and boy, I really noticed during the day when I didn't do it in the morning. But bottom line, it's not that sitting that 20 minutes that changes my day. It's the fact that I'm practicing being present during that time, right? I'm not just spacing out. I'm practicing. I'm paying attention to my breath. And so then when a moment comes during the day when I'm like a little stressed or distracted or whatever, it's much easier for me to say, wait a minute, and take that pause and then make a better decision. So that's how those things are connected, I think.
I'll make you laugh, by the way. Dave Nemo, who I know you know very well, was in the studio the other day, and they were talking about how certain people panic when things go wrong in the studio. And he turned to Dre, our producer, and he said, Jimmy doesn't panic. He gets angry. And he says the difference, of course, is he said it's not the same thing as when he gets hangry. And one of the things that I think is just extraordinary that Dave pointed out to me is that, my anger is a way I deal with crisis, and I can use it and direct it in a really kind of positive way. He was also pointing out that if I'm not thinking about the fact that I should be eating, that my anger is a very different kind of anger, a little bit more irrational. And I bring all of this up because the idea that checking in with yourself in regards to meditation, in regards to mindfulness, is also a great reminder of the practicalities. Have I eaten? Have I gotten enough sleep? Have I taken the walk I'm supposed to take? That it seems to me you're saying that part of the meditation allows you to go away to kind of recharge, but also to be present for what's next. Is that fair?
Yeah, absolutely. And we have a kind of a whole way that we look at it in whole health. And our health coaches do a lot of this with veterans and with people they work with, which is if you learn how to just pause, right? Just talking about 5 seconds, 10 seconds, just pause and take a deep breath. You put yourself in a position then to make a choice about what you're going to do next, right? You take yourself off of automatic and you put yourself in a position where you're actually conscious of what you're deciding to do next. And whether that's take a walk, say something nice to my wife, eat a piece of fruit instead of having the soda, whatever it might be, it's that pause that lets me make a more healthy decision. And I don't want to pretend like this is not happening every minute of every day. I mean, every day, speaking personally, I make about probably 500 bad decisions, and then I make maybe 100 or 200 good ones. But I'm always working on shifting that balance, right, in the direction of what do I really want to do, not just what am I in the habit of doing. You know what I mean? So I think that's where that mindful pause, and I think Dave, just from our conversations, Dave's really good at that. He knows how to do that. And it makes a big difference in just sort of all different aspects of life. I want to say, to be honest, it makes a difference in our relationships too, with family and with friends and people we work with. Sometimes you're just grouchy, and it's not because the person who's in front of you did something. It's just because something you remembered or happened to you earlier today or whatever. If you take that pause, you're like, I'm not really grouchy at this person. I don't want to take it out on this person. Then you get the feedback from them. You don't get all that crazy argument, bad feedback that makes you feel even worse than you did to begin with, That's why I think that pause is so key.
I really love the idea of what do I really want to do as opposed to what do I usually do, because a lot of people don't realize that a lot of the time is that, and I go back to eating, of course, because it's the great connective tissue in regards to the more people are mindful, the better choices they make in regards to eating. But I think about the idea of breakfast. What do I normally do? I reach for something sweet to kind of charge myself to get out the house. If I in fact reach for protein, I'll sit there and chew it for a moment and realize, oh God, that's what I really needed. And that's what I really wanted. And I do love the idea of figuring out what it is you really want as opposed to the quick fix of kind of satiating the emotion emotional need as opposed to satisfying the emotional want. You talked a little bit about meditation here, and I want to kind of go through harnessing the power of your mind, because it's not just meditation, but we can start there in regards to people who don't really, they hear that term, and a lot of people hear sitars almost immediately. That's not what meditation is. And I say that with the fact that the Hare Krishnas are less than 6 blocks away here. They have a big giant headquarters over here. I feel like I'm in a Beatles movie, as a matter of fact, sometimes. But can you kind of talk about what meditation actually is, as opposed to preconceived notions of it?
Yeah, I mean, I think the thing is there are hundreds of different kinds of meditation. So, there's the kind that you're talking about that the Hare Krishna folks do, where there's chanting and that kind of thing. There's mindfulness meditation, where you're sitting and you're focusing on your breathing. But there's all kinds of other meditations. For example, there's moving meditations. Like if you do something like Tai Chi, right, which is that exercise that people are familiar with. It's very slow. You've seen probably videos of older people doing it in parks, and it's very popular now. It includes meditation, right? Because you have to be breathing. You have to be present in the moment to do the movements the way you're supposed to. And so you're meditating while you're moving, right? I know somebody else who does, it's a whole school of this. They do mindful walking. So, and I do this a lot because day is busy. Sometimes when I'm out with the dog, which I have to do every morning anyway, I just take the time to slow down a little bit, make sure I'm looking around, see if I can keep my mind on where I actually am instead of what's going to happen later in the day. So there are so many kinds of meditation. You don't have to get hung up in kind of your preconceived notion or what somebody else told you meditation was. It's really about whatever works for you to shift your mind out of just the yada, yada, yada kind of standard patterns that we all run in through most of our day. And for different people, that can be very different kind of approach. There are runners I know who will tell you running is their meditation, because when they're running, their mind is calm, they're present, they're looking at what's around, they're focused on their form, they're not worrying about the rest of their day. So I think you could give 100 different examples, as many as there are people, of how you can approach meditation, basically.
Let me tell you something, Dr. Kligler. When I don't walk 6,000 steps in a row, I feel it at the end of the day. After the show, usually about an hour after the show, because our studios are in one of the most beautiful locations in New Orleans, I leave the studio and I walk down to City Park. And if I don't get those 6,000 steps in, not in the moment, but at the end of the day, I'm absolutely cognitively aware of what has been lacking. And the other thing is, I wanted to ask you this. It's a good thing, isn't it, when you don't do what you're supposed to do and it begins to gnaw at you later? That's a good thing to feel, because it pushes you back towards doing it as well. When you get to that point, it's like when Dave doesn't go to the gym, he feels it. He will literally tell me, I need to go, as opposed to just wanting to go. I need to do that. And that's an important place to get to. It means you've actually begun to make it part of you. Is that fair?
Right, absolutely. Yeah, I think you're making a new habit. And habits, because of the way humans are, habits make us feel comfortable, right? They make us feel like we know what to expect. And so that's why, for me, that meditation in the morning, because it's a habit now, and because I don't feel quite right when I don't do it, it just makes me do it, because I know later on I'm not going to feel right, and I don't particularly want to deal with that, So I think absolutely, and that's why, and I think the other really important thing about this, which I know we say every time we talk about whole health, it's not a do it once or do it 1 week or 1 month and you're done. People are always getting better, taking a step back, going forward, taking 2 steps back. So a lot of the secret of this is, when you find yourself falling out of those healthy habits, you just don't get down on yourself. You just sort of say, okay, just tomorrow's another day. I'm going to take another stab at it. And I think that's really key. That's just as important as what it is you do, because we spend so much time judging ourselves, and we make our lives so much more miserable than they have to be, because we think we have to be perfect. And let me just say one other thing. I think the other reason that it's really crucial to turn these things into a habit is because when you look around you and you look at the ads that are streaming in front of us and the billboards and I'm sure people, driving trucks can relate to this because, whatever's out there to pay attention to, you're going to pay attention to it. And so, there's just stuff coming at us all the time on the internet, on television, to distract us, right? That's the purpose of all that media. It's not to help us be present. It's to take our minds off of wherever we are, put them somewhere else. And so you have to be able in yourself to provide like the counterbalance to that, if you know what I mean. You have to have the kind of oomph in yourself to be able to say, okay, all that stuff's going on out there, but that doesn't have to dictate what I'm doing at this particular moment, whether it's walking or sitting or making a better, healthier eating choice. I think that's important to note, is that our culture, our society doesn't necessarily make it easy, right? We get a lot of stuff coming at us all the time. So I think that's an important fact too.
I have some very close friends who are football coaches, very successful ones at the collegiate level, and a lot of them talk about staying on schedule. And you just made me think about something. When you talk about the idea of advertising, when you talk about the idea of distraction, their objective, the principle of their objective, as you said, was to put us someplace else. In many ways, I've just made the connection, didn't even think about it, that mindfulness is an attempt to stay present to prevent things from taking you elsewhere, that the only time you want to go elsewhere is when you choose actively to go elsewhere.
Right.
And that's so important. I wanted to ask a question here because when you sent your notes, meditation and mindfulness based on invention, I get breathing exercises, I understand progressive muscle relaxation and clinical hypnosis, and I want to talk about all of those. Can you explain biofeedback training to me?
Yes. So biofeedback is another one of the, complementary integrative health kind of approaches that we cover in VA. And it's really it works really well for certain things. Basically, the idea is if you provide feedback to your body and your mind of your physical state, let's say your heart rate or your skin temperature or, something concrete that your body is doing on its own, you can learn using breathing and imagery and sort of meditation type techniques. You can learn to actually affect some of the processes in your body that you think of as being out of your control. You can slow your pulse down. You can lower your blood pressure. And you can also do a lot to help reduce basically overall stress. And so biofeedback is a technique that you have to go to somebody to learn it. It's hard to get it on your own. So usually you go to somebody for a few sessions who's a practitioner and they teach you. But then after that, it's something you can do on your own. And it's really effective for a lot of different conditions, for headaches, for all kinds of pain conditions. It can be very effective because it's another way of teaching yourself how to be present in your body. I think that's a good way to put it. And it can be really effective. One of the great things about having these different kinds of approaches, whether it's imagery, meditation, biofeedback, is different things are going to work for different people. Some people want to be walking or running or doing Tai Chi. And so it's great that we have all these different ways to get basically to the same place, because that means whatever's right for a given person, we can make that happen.
This is interesting too because I want to ask you a question if this in fact actually qualifies. So I used to suffer from terrible migraines. I get maybe one or two a year now with the whole completion of the auras and the limited eyesight and the nausea and then the slow return to normalcy after the headache. The headache actually gives me a sense of relief because I know the whole thing, the episode is closing itself out. It forces my hand. The moment I recognize those symptoms, I immediately go into a dark room. I immediately lay on the couch, I put a cold rag on my face and realize it's going to happen, and there's very little limited I can do about that aura of limited eyesight. And I was kind of wondering, is that the kind of process that it's almost forcing my hand to get engaged in biofeedback training, to begin to do things that I know will ameliorate the symptoms of the migraine and have actually allowed me to control it? Is that an example of what we're talking about here? That sometimes our hand gets forced because of an accelerated heart rate or a spike in our blood sugar, and we have to recognize those symptoms, apply mindfulness, and remedy what it is that's happening as best we can.
Yeah, I think that's a good example. I mean, I think for migraine in particular, it's a very specific example, right? Because, what you're doing is you are teaching your body how to actually target something that's happening inside your brain. The blood vessels are dilating in your brain. That's what's causing all that pain and all those strange symptoms. And so the more I don't want to give people the wrong impression. You can just go to one biofeedback class and your migraines are going to go away.
No, it took, and I still get migraines. I want to make this really clear. I still get migraines. I just know how to cope with them now. That's all. I want to make that clear.
Okay. So there you go. That's what you're talking about. And that's why all of these things, including mindfulness, but all these things can be so effective for pain because they teach you how to just step back one or two steps from the pain and do what you can do to calm yourself down. You know what I mean? I listened to this great, I don't want to plug another podcast on here, but
I want you to do
podcast.
That. By the way,
well, it's
that.
Somewhere else. It's called Real Survival Stories, actually, and it's a podcast. It's some British company, and they talk to people who have survived life-threatening disasters, plane crash, climbing, fall, whatever it might be. And almost without exception, they all talk about how when they were in that moment, when they were injured or bleeding or whatever, they knew that they had to breathe in a way that would slow down their heart, because they knew that would slow down their blood loss, lower their blood pressure, and keep them around for longer until they could be rescued. And that's a great example. And a lot of really high-level athletes absolutely practice mindfulness. So if you watch an NBA game, you watch a basketball game, and you see that 1 second when the best foul shooters take a deep breath before they shoot, that's what they're doing. They're coming into their body. They're coming into the present. All those people in the crowd waving those things and clapping and yelling, they don't matter because I'm coming into my body. And another example that I know a lot of veterans can relate to is when you're learning how to shoot. One of the fundamentals of learning how to shoot is that breath before you pull the trigger. I'm settling into myself so that I'm going to do this with the maximum skill and concentration that I have available. And so you can put this in so many different settings where it can help with so many different things. You can tell I'm crazy about this because I think this is one of the things that could really make the world a better place. If more of us really started to do this, I think, not to get corny on you, but I also think people would be a lot nicer to each other, because somebody steals my parking space on the street in New York. I could pull up next to him and yell at him. We could get into a big fight. Or I could take a deep breath, just be like, there's another parking space. I'm going to move on, right? And we didn't poison my day, poison his day because of some silly thing that doesn't matter anyway. You know what I mean? And that's the kind of thing that this mindful awareness can really bring out is it really changes people's lives. And I know even in my own family, it's really changed the way we relate to each other. The rest of my family doesn't do a daily meditation, but we've had this kind of take a deep breath, take a pause, think about it. What do you want to say? We've had this as kind of part of how our family has learned to interact over the years. It's so helpful to keep from just a lot of stupid fights that make everybody have a bad day, So I don't mean to go on so long about it, but this has so much potential for people to improve their lives and get themselves to be able to stay focused on the things that are really important to them. I just think it's a really amazing tool that everybody can use. Like I said, you don't have to be a guru or a Buddhist monk or a Hare Krishna. You can do this in your own way. So, and can I pitch one thing just
Please.
while I'm blabbing on here?
Go.
we have a great website, #LiveWholeHealth, which has a whole bunch of brief videos and audios of people demonstrating different kinds of complementary health techniques, but lots of different kinds of meditation, guided imagery. Some of them are as short as like 3 minutes. You can plug in and listen to it anytime. And you just Google #LiveWholeHealth and it'll take you there. And there's tons and tons of free resources there if you just want to take a look and give it a try.
By the way, it's really funny. Right as we were talking about all this, somebody actually came rolling by the studio and literally was leaning on their horn. By the way, you can always promote any great podcast you hear. One of the things I love about doing this show is I'm a big fan is if we make good recommendations, Dr. Kligler, people check it out and then they go, that was a good recommendation. Let's go back and check out Jimmy Mack and Dr. Kligler for more good recommendations. The other thing is, too, there's a terrific article, I'm sure you've read it, about Steph Curry and the art of breathing that is recently in the Atlantic that is so worth checking out. I think if you just type in...
I haven't seen that, but I will say he is one of my heroes.
Yeah,
just
and
for this reason, because it's not only when he shoots a foul shot, when he talks, when they get him on camera at the end of the game, you know how they always interview the big star.
Yeah.
He is not just sort of saying the line they all say, like it was a team effort, my team was great, whatever. He's like looking at the interviewer. He's thinking about what he's going to say, and he's always got something really kind of particularly, I don't know, insightful, intelligent to say about the game. And so I'm not saying, I mean, it's tough when you talk about your heroes because you go on and on about them. But I'm going to definitely take a look at that article. For
yeah,
sure.
it's great.
A great example.
Burrow, by the way, in Cincinnati is the same thing. I just love it when he gets in front of the microphone. He's like, yeah, I screwed that up. That was totally on me. And I was like, oh, yeah, I didn't make a good pass. That was an amazing catch. I just love that sort of present in the interview. Dr. Kligler, we're out of time. I knew this would happen. If I could have you on every week, I would, but all I can say is thank you, guys. It's whole health we're talking about here. #live whole health. If you go on Google, it's going to come up. I can't thank you enough for making time for us this morning, as you always do, my friend. Thank you so much.
Oh, my pleasure. Thanks.
Dr. Ben Kligler, of course, appears on a regular basis on Highway to Health here on Road Gang Radio.